At 7:42 a.m. on August 4, 2025, a US Navy A-18 Super Hornet cut across the grey-blue sky 65 miles east of Taiwan. Below lay international waters, the surface glinting under the early sun. Suddenly, the cockpit shrieked with a piercing tone radar warning. This wasn't a probing sweep. This was a hard lock. A Chinese J-16 had just aimed its invisible weapon directly at the Hornet fire control system, fully engaged, an unspoken declaration. The American pilot instantly banked left. The threat receiver blinked crimson. Weapon-grade lock signal. No warning call. No radio contact. Not a single word. Only deadly silence. In seconds, countermeasures deployed. Flares burst from the jet's tail. The electronic warfare system howled. The Hornet dove low, skimming the sea at just 300 feet. This was no training drill. This was survival. The pilot gripped the stick, his chest crushed by punishing G-forces. Streaks of magnesium flares spat out like fiery spears, ready to blind any heat-seeking missiles. Yet the radar alarm kept screaming. The lock remained. The J-16 twin-engine heavyweight with long-range radar and air-to-air missiles was closing in at over 500 knots, only 40 nautical miles away. Barely 1 minute from firing range. Inside the Hornet's cockpit, all sound seemed swallowed. No radio chatter, no calls for help, just the pilot's ragged breathing and the guttural roar of the engines. Each second stretched like an eternity. What the J-16 pilot didn't know, this Hornet wasn't alone. 30 seconds earlier, another A-18 had silently maneuvered behind the Chinese jet, slipping beneath its radar. A classic bait tactic. If China fired first, retaliation would be instant. The balance could flip in the blink of an eye. At 7:43, the lock vanished. The J-16 yanked hard, right carving back toward Chinese airspace. No missile fired, no radio call. No explanation. Yet no one on the American side mistook this for an error. This was a test, a provocation, and just one trigger pull away from war. The Hornets regrouped, holding their line over international waters. Calm on the surface, but adrenaline still surging in their veins. The carrier strike group was 100 miles west, at least 12 minutes out. But up here, you don't have 12 minutes. You have seconds to live or die. Today, China pulled back. But what about tomorrow, because this is far from the first time. Between 2014 and 2024, more than 300 close encounters were recorded between Chinese and Western military aircraft over the South China Sea. Some were professional, many were reckless. In May 2023, a Chinese J-16 sliced across the nose of a US RC-135 spy plane at just 20 feet. The turbulence rocked the massive aircraft like a leaf in the wind. The Pentagon called it unnecessarily aggressive. Beijing called it standard procedure. In October 2022, a Canadian CP-140 Aurora patrol plane was intercepted 5 times on a single mission. Chinese pilots fired flares in front of its cockpit, jammed its radar. And Australia. In June that year, a Chinese fighter dumped aluminum chaff directly into the flight path of an RAF P-8 Poseidon, forcing evasive maneuvers. The fibers nearly shredded the engines a hair's breadth from catastrophe. These are no accidents. They are tactics. Calculated pushes at the boundaries, probing responses, asserting dominance over disputed airspace. Military analysts call it grey zone warfare actions that stop just short of war, yet carry the risk of igniting one. It takes only a single mistake, a radar lock that isn't cancelled, a pilot who loses patience, a missile launch that can't be called back, and everything explodes. The darker truth, almost none of these incidents trigger real diplomacy. Hotlines remain silent. No resolutions are passed. Risks are simply rolled forward to the next flyby. So when a US F-A-18 found itself radar locked by a Chinese J-16 on the morning of August 4th, 2025, it wasn't extraordinary. It was a reminder this dangerous game plays out every single day, and one day a single wrong move may turn provocation into war. This is the new normal. Let's peel back the layers of what really happened in the skies on the morning of August 4th. When the US pilot saw the radar warning switch to a hard lock, it meant the Chinese J-16 had entered the most dangerous phase, moving from search to track and lock. A concentrated beam had pinned the Hornet's position and velocity with accuracy down to just a few meters. The J-16 is no amateur. It carries the Type 1473 phased array radar capable of tracking multiple targets simultaneously. Once locked, the pilot only needs a single button press to launch a PL-12 or PL-15 active radar-guided missiles with ranges over 200 kilometers streaking at Mach 4. From that moment, death could arrive in seconds. The American pilot didn't panic. He followed the drill etched into muscle memory. Step 1. Break the line of sight, cut the lock angle, force the adversary to lose track. Flares shot out blazing magnesium streaks, lighting up the sky, luring away any heat-seeking missiles like predators chasing false prey. Step 2. Deploy ECM. The A-18 Super Hornet carries the AN/ALQ-214CM, a true electronic beast. It spews out jamming signals, building an invisible smokescreen across the electromagnetic spectrum, making the Hornet vanish one moment and appear as multiple targets the next. Meanwhile, the second Hornet silently slid in behind the J-16. It didn't switch on its radar, relying only on passive sensors to soak up data. Had it activated its fire control radar, the sky could have erupted into a dogfight in an instant. Instead, it chose silence, a quiet, looming threat. That's the razor-thin balance, showing strength without firing first. But remember, this at these speeds, the time from radar lock to missile launch is under 4 seconds. The pilot has to ask himself, was this a bluff, or the opening shot of a war-won wrong call? And it wouldn't just be a jet falling into the sea. It would be two superpowers spiraling into conflict. History has already written a warning. On April 1st, 2001, a US Navy EP-3E surveillance plane was flying near Hainan Island. 2 Chinese J-8 interceptors rushed in. One got too close and slammed into the EP-3's wing. The J-8 disintegrated. Its pilot was killed instantly. The EP-3 was forced into an emergency landing. 24 American crew members were detained and interrogated for 11 days. The world held its breath as a routine mission exploded into an international crisis within minutes. After the Hainan incident, everything changed. Before 2001, intercepts were tense but professional. Afterward, they grew more aggressive, closer passes, faster reactions, even radar locks used as a language of intimidation. The goal was obvious: push the West to its limits, test how far they would go without firing back. August 4th, 2025 was simply another chapter in the same script. A J-16 pressed in calculating risk. An American pilot responded executing by the book. No shots fired. But the tension was real, the danger undeniable, and the margin for error almost zero. Now imagine a different outcome. What if the Chinese pilot had fired? At 40 nautical miles, a PL-15 would close the gap in under 70 seconds. Less than a minute and a half to detect, react, survive. The missile would climb, then dive at Mach 4, its active radar locked on, engineered for one purpose only: destruction. The Hornet might flare jam maneuver, survival still uncertain. And then the second Hornet lurking behind the J-16 would be cleared to retaliate under rules of engagement. An AIM-120 AMRAAM could cut through the air in just 45 seconds. 2 missiles, 2 pilots, and the nightmare would only be beginning. Both jets belonged to a carrier strike group. That meant out at sea, cruisers, destroyers, and AWACS were already watching. The moment a missile left its rail, the entire system would flip to red alert. Aegis cruisers would lock targets, patrol flights would scramble, submarines would shift into strike positions. Within minutes, the region would ignite. In Beijing and Washington, crisis phones would ring off the hook. Emergency response teams would scramble. But by then, it would already be too late. One missile, two aircraft, and thousands of lives could be pulled into the flames. That is the fragility of peace in this era. One button press, one wrong move, and the world could change overnight. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. What happened on August 4th could repeat at any moment, and next time, the world might not be so lucky. Don't miss the next analysis. Hit subscribe now to stay updated on the most critical stories from the skies and the seas, where the line between peace and war is only one trigger pull away.